As we approach the end of the year, I always find it rather hilarious when clients that you work with all of a sudden get these ideas that they want to implement before the end of the year, right? Some of them can be literally pulled from their New Year's goals that they haven't even gotten around to at all, but they're like, hey, I said at the beginning, and now I want to, stick to my word and get them done before the year is out. Other stuff can be completely just spur of the moment, like, hey, wouldn't it be cool, just in time for the holidays if we did X, Y, and Z, right? A lot of people doing a lot of last minute planning, right? And because of that, I want to kind of give you some tips on how to manage this workload, right? Because the crux of it all is that this is all additional stuff, right? It is not the day in, day out, week to week stuff that you're already working on with them. Now all of a sudden there's this additional tsunami of work that you got to take on, right? And it is rather hilarious, like towards the end of the year, there just becomes this holiday rush of just work, and everyone wants it done before the new year, even though it doesn't technically need to be done. Anyway, I could go on and on about that, but the point being, it's a lot, and we got to have ways to manage this. So number one, planning and prioritizing, right? So, once you kind of know what their overall goals are, like the moment, people start saying like, hey, I would love to do X, Y, and Z, start to, schedule a meeting with them and be like, okay, so let's plan this out. What are you actually trying to accomplish? What are you trying to do? And okay, here's how long each of these things will take. So what are we, what's top priority, what's second priority, third priority, whatever the case may be, right? And so that way the goals and how you get to that finish line is clear to everyone, right? Because oftentimes, especially, if you look at contracts with, anyone that you work with, generally, like, for example, when I make a pitch deck, Armani, who's this graphic designer that I love working with, she'll send me a terms of work where it'll highlight, how long things will take her, the benchmarks, and, the turnaround time. But it also includes for me of like, okay, she'll send me something by such and such date, and then I have 2 days to turn around any notes, right? And it's not that I can't take more time, but failing to, if it does take more time, then all of a sudden it pushes back all the other deadlines, and I can't be upset if she doesn't deliver on time because I'm at fault, right? So it's making that clear through the planning phase. Number two, it's communication and expectation management. So this all sort of folds in with planning and prioritization. Having that open dialogue and also being honest, right? Having clear and realistic expectations and saying like, hey, based on everything that you want to get done, we could do 3 out of these 5 things. What are they, right? And, saying like, hey, we'll do our best. Like if we can, maybe we'll get to them, but it's doubtful. So I just want you to know that up front and so forth. So that way you avoid overcommitting, and that way there's not this all of a sudden negativity where all of a sudden something that they were expecting to get done isn't done, right? So communication and expectation management is very key. Along with that is early planning and scheduling and pre-scheduling, right? So making sure, right now we're sort of coming up on that sort of wave. And, if in hindsight, I would have put this out episode a little bit earlier, but even myself, I got caught up in kind of all of this. But yeah, you want to start as much as you can giving yourself lead time, so right now, like start scheduling it, as much as you can. And so people know of like, hey, here's what I'm going to be able to take on. If you have any additional stuff, like let's talk about it now, so that way things are as smooth as they can be. I oftentimes do this with, whenever I go, let's say on a vacation, which is rare, but, generally my vacations are working on projects. But all the same, if I know I'm not going to be available for X, Y, and Z time, I'll let I'll remind people generally, a month in advance, and I'll kind of remind them each week, and also give them opportunities to say like, hey, to ensure a smooth version where during the time that I'm essentially gone, that all the things still get done. We can, pre-edit, pre-tape, whatever the case may be, but it requires your involvement and stuff like that. And so, just kind of thinking ahead, especially based on your client's needs, is important and helps make things efficient for both you and them. Number 4, delegation and collaboration, right? Sometimes, there's definitely periods in my life where things get a little bit overwhelming. And so in those moments, I call various people that I trust, that I've worked with in the past, and I say, hey, would you want to be part of this project? Can you take stuff off my plate? And, I'll cut them into whatever that I'm making as part of that project. Other times, in the planning phase of stuff, when I'm speaking with a client, I'll say, hey, here's what I can take on, but it's also going to require some graphics work. So, that's a separate thing. I could do it, but it'll take me much longer, as opposed to, I have these various friends that we could talk to them, and it would take them this much time and it would cost this much. So don't be afraid of that collaboration delegation, because it can be a lifesaver for both you and, at the end of the day, if the client you're working with wants something done, then, to them, the cost analysis could be, well, yeah, sure, let's pay somebody else as well because I want it done, versus not getting it done, right? So take that into consideration. Number 5, time blocking and structured work hours, right? This is important for you. So, the planning and stuff like that, that's kind of between you and the client. But now, as far as time blocking and structured work hours, this is an individual thing, right? This is what you need to implement for yourself, focusing the work hours that you have so you maximize productivity. And you know yourself better than anyone else, or at least that's the theory. And so how you structure your day, when you work best and stuff like that, as much as you can control that schedule, really putting the puzzle pieces together so that way you can set yourself up for success rather than failure, right? So that's time blocking and structured work hours. Number 6, automation tools, right? There are plenty of software tools out there that help speed up a lot of this. And so utilizing them, for stuff that you can, right? I think it is very important, right? And, there's definitely times for me where, I take on seasonal stuff or like one-offs and stuff like that where I don't need the software fully. And so what I'll do is I'll just get a trial version of something for the time that I need it, and then cancel it when I don't, right? And so at least I'm paying for it when I need it and not paying for it when I'm not using it, right? So really consider the various tools that are available to you that can help speed up your process. Number 7, client management systems, right? All of this really, having a streamlined process really helps, right? So having just even something as simple like, do they prefer texts or emails? And also knowing like, hey, let's just keep everything in one email chain, or hey, we're going to work off this one Google Doc, or we're going like, there's plenty of just management softwares out there in general, right? That say, here's the task, and here, and it lays it out of like what's in progress, what got done, what's coming up, and stuff like that. So however that needs to be structured, it's important to sort of, for everyone involved, to have a system so they can kind of clearly see this, and this is an implementation of the planning stage, so that way everyone's on the same page of where things are at, and you don't have to get 800 questions all the time of like, hey, where are we at with this? Oh, by the way, where we're at with this, blah, 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 right? They can, people can kind of just reference themselves, and that allows everyone to be able to work rather than, have to answer 1,000 questions coming at them, right? Number 8, flexible work plans and adaptability, right? there is going to be things that come up that you didn't plan for. And you're going to have to be adaptable in that in order to make things work. Now, to the same token, right, when we talk about communication and expectation management, things may arise just in general which prevent certain things from getting completed, right? And so as much as you're going to have to be flexible and adaptive, you have to also create that expectation for your clients, right? It goes kind of both ways if you're going to pull off some of this stuff. Number 9, self-care and time off, right? At the end of the day, you being burnt out is not going to help you, and it's certainly not going to help them. And so knowing, how much you are feasibly able to take on versus just because you can, should you? So it ties back to that communication expectation management about having realistic deadlines. In theory, let's say you could get something done, but at what cost to you, and will the quality of the rest of the work suffer and so forth, and is that a true long-term solution, especially with other stuff that might be going on day to day, week to week, stuff like that. And so that's where the delegation and collaboration aspect comes in, where in order for you to be able to focus on the stuff that you're best at focusing on, can we bring in other people so you're not overloaded, right? Just really kind of consider that. And the last thing, once this is all said and done, having a review process, what worked, what could have been improved. And that's very important because, I think we get stuck on this hamster wheel too often times, and it's like go, go, go. And without that looking back, how are you ever going to improve, right? And this is both for yourself, this is for them, to just, the goal is to always make things smoother. I do this a lot. I remember at the end of last year, I was sort of really overworked at the end of the year. And I remember, I was like, okay, well, I can't blame anyone else. It was on me, but what I did was, now at the start of the year, I was like, okay, I'm going to implement blackout dates, which are dates that, I am not working, and, we can do stuff in advance. I can find other people to fill in for me, but these are the dates that I'm not working. And I created a series of dates that were my blackout dates because that was just important to me, right? I just couldn't do another, for me, another holiday season where I was literally working Christmas and stuff like that. And, so that was part of my internal review process. But, I shared that with, with the people that I worked on. And, so far we've already gone through a couple of the blackout dates, and people have been respectful of that, and it's just all a matter of figuring it out. And so there's a version of this that is both internal as well as for the collective working process, the post-project review process. So that's kind of an overview of how I would approach this end of the year madness. As always, you can ask questions, comment down below, or, if you have any other suggestions to add to this, by all means, please do. I want this, this is an introduction to all these things, but I would love to keep the dialogue going and for us collectively to be able to help each other out, and obviously, I'm talking about the end of the year rush, but I think all these strategies in general apply throughout the year, so it's not just a one and done sort of a solution. So, we can add to it, we can change it up, right? Speaking to the flexible work plans and adaptability, let's, by the sharing of ideas, we can sort of elevate this process for all of us collectively. And of course, each of us works individually in some capacity, and the projects we work on are, similar but also unique in their own way. So there can be a kind of mixing and matching, but overall, I did try to make this list to be as whole as possible and applicable for anything and everyone. So I hope it does help. Anyway, thank you so much for taking time to tune in. I hope to see you next time.